Hey guys, I found this Reddit post written by Horror Veteran R. I'm going to read it verbatim and pretty much claim it as my own. Hello, individual investors. Now that I've dug into 803, I have enough background to go ahead and look into DTC-2021-014, which actually has a lot of helpful supernotes or footnotes that better explain the NSCC 803 filing, which is in regards to the SFT service. Now, as far as DTC 2021-014, this is the settlement services offered in relation to the SFT service proposed by NSCC on July 22nd. So remember, on July 22nd, we had DTC 2021-014, Advance Notice, NSCC 803, as well as Proposed Rule 010 on top of FINRA Notice 21 through 27. So remember, all that on the same day. Let's go ahead and dig in. Wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. Is that PowerPoint? Weird. So this is the process when of the share cycle. So you have execution, where the buyer and seller enter into a legally binding agreement to transfer securities from the seller to the buyer in exchange for money from the buyer to the seller. Clearing, this is where NSCC comes in. Performing all the necessary steps leading to the settlement, such as posting sufficient margin and recording the transaction. The settlement process is going to be what the DTC provides as far as SFT transactions that cannot be cleared through the NSCC. So settlement is the actual exchange of securities for money when the securities are titled to the buyer and the money is transferred to the seller. So the purpose of this filing would amend the rules, the settlement guide, and the fee guide in order to provide participants that are also members of the NSCC with settlement services in connection with the proposed optional securities financing transaction clearing service of the NSCC. Now, the proposed NSCC's SFT service would provide central clearing, basically describes it, cash for collateral with interest rate typically done overnight. Now, for the purposes of this filing, they're going to be referring to NSCC SFT counterparty. And as used in this filing, this does not refer to sponsored members or sponsoring members or their SFT transactions at NSCC. So a sponsored member is a buy-side entity that is in regards to the SFT service. A sponsoring member is the NSCC member who sponsors for the SFT service. So none of this is going to be related to this filing, and they wanted to point that out from the get-go. So all SFT transactions between a sponsored member and a sponsoring member would settle on the books of the sponsoring member. Sponsored member equals buy-side entity. Sponsoring member equals NSCC member who sponsors the entity for the SFT service. This proposed rule change by DTC does not relate to sponsoring members, sponsored members, or their SFT transactions. These SFT transactions and the related activity would occur outside of DTC and would not settle at DTC. The term NSCC SFT counterparty does not refer, again, to the sponsored or sponsoring members related to the SFT filing. So this proposed rule is trying to accomplish the following. Number one, expand the types of instructions that NSCC as the representative or special representative of each participant that is also a member of NSCC can submit to DTC on behalf of a participant with respect to an account of the participant. So basically, NSCC instructions to DTC. Number one, NSCC as the special representative of participants. So pursuant to Rule 6, NSCC is the special representative of each participant that is also a member of NSCC. Currently, as the special representative, NSCC may instruct DTC on behalf of a participant to make a transfer of securities from the account of the participant to an account that NSCC maintains at DTC in connection with its CNS settlement system. Now, if you remember, the CNS settlement system was used in the old securities lending program that was used in a vehicle. It was used as a vehicle for manipulation. So the special representative CNS account is account number 888. We'll probably need to use that for future reference. The NSCC SFT service would operate separately from the NSCC CNS system. Now, this is critical because now we know that the NSCC SFT service will not be continuous net settlement, meaning that no net or capital netting will not be available to anybody that does not use this service. So that's going to be an incentive that they provide to people who do qualify and are able to use the SFT service. So a little background on the CNS system. It's a system for accounting and settling CNS contracts whereby members settling trades in CNS securities are netted so that with respect to each issue of the CNS securities in which the member has activity, the member is either obligated to deliver units of that security, or a short position, or is entitled to receive units of that security, a long position, delivery obligation being to the corporation, and the right to receive being against the corporation. So again, the delivery obligation being to the corporation, meaning delivery units of short would go to the corporation, and the right to receive would be against the corporation. So to reiterate, the NSCC SFT service would be separate from the CNS account. This is good, as the CNS settlement system was used in the old stock lending program, which was a vehicle for manipulation by creating FTDs, naked short selling, basically everything that the SFT filing outlined at the very beginning. Now, the second thing they're going to try to do in this filing is establish a new type of payment order for the crediting and debiting of payment amounts related to SFT activity at the NSCC, or SFT price differential, or SFT-PD, to and from the accounts of the participants that are NSCC SFT counterparties. So if we look at this, SFT-PD transactions, what that is, it's a securities financing transaction price differential. It's a method whereby a seller charges one amount for the immediate cash payment of merchandise and other amount for the same item or items when payment is rendered at a future date or in installments. The immediate payment price is called the cash price. The later price is known as the time price or the credit price. The time price differential is the difference between the two prices. You can, if you want to read more, there is a link to this dude, whoever this freaking retard is. You'll have to link here, and I'll link this below. So a DVP transaction, that's a delivery versus payment transaction, and it is a securities industry settlement method that guarantees the transfer of securities only happens after payment has been made. DVP stipulates that the buyer's cash payment for securities must be made prior to or at the same time as the delivery of the security. So if we look right here, as noted above, pursuant to the proposed rule change, NSCC would submit pairs of instructions to DTC as follows. The first one would be on its own behalf with respect to the NSCC SFT account, and the second one would be on the behalf of a participant as its special representative with respect to the DTC account of the participant. Accordingly, in the order to effectuate a DVP transaction between participants that are NSCC SFT counterparties to an SFT, NSCC would send DTC a pair of DVP instructions, or delivery versus payment instructions, that are as follows. Number one instruction as the special representative of the participant, that is an NSCC SFT counterparty, to deliver the subject securities versus payment from the account of the delivering participant to the NSCC SFT account. And two, on NSCC's own behalf, to deliver the subject securities versus payment from the NSCC SFT account to the account of the receiving participant, that is the other NSCC SFT counterparty. As explained in more detail below, if the pair of instructions satisfy DTC risk management controls, which if you look at Supernote 13, it outlines the collateral monitor, net debit cap, as their main two tools for risk management. The collateral monitor requires net debit settlement obligations as they accrue intraday to be fully collateralized, while the net debit cap limits the amount of any participant's net debit settlement obligation to an amount that can be satisfied with DTC liquidity resources. If risk management controls in the modified look-ahead are not satisfied, the instructions would recycle, and if not completed, would drop at the end of the day. Now, if you look at Supernote 14, what they mean by recycle, if you go to the settlement service guide, they give you a list of reasons for recycling. Number one would be the deliverer has insufficient position to complete the transaction. Completing the transaction would make the delivery's collateral monitor negative. Completing the transaction would cause the total value in the receiver's account, including the securities involved, to be less than the resulting net settlement. Or completing the transaction would cause the receiver's net settlement obligation to exceed its net debit cap. So all these are scenarios where it could be recycled to, I guess, better protect the risk management controls. So to reiterate that slide, we can gather that in respect to DVP instructions, NSCC would submit one instruction on its own behalf with respect to the NSCC SFT account. Number two, one instruction on behalf of a participant as its special representative with respect to the DTC account of the participant. Accordingly, in order to effectuate a DVP transaction between participants that are NSCC SFT counterparties to an SFT, NSCC would send DTC a pair of instructions. Number one, it would deliver the subject securities versus payment from the account of the delivering participant to the SFT account, and the other one would be on NSCC's own behalf to deliver the subject securities versus payment from the NSCC account to the account of the receiving participant. So the third thing they're looking to do is apply a modified look-ahead process to the new account that the NSCC would maintain at DTC in connection with the SFT service. So the look-ahead processing is nothing new. They're just modifying it for a few reasons. Number one, to accommodate the proposed SFT service. Number two, to prevent transaction blockage from occurring due to risk management controls on the NSCC SFT account. And then number three, to ensure that there are no net settlement obligations against the SFT account. Because remember, there's no net settlement with the SFT account unless you're an NSCC member using the service. So if you have an SFT obligation and you're settling with DTC, that's not good. You have to make sure that there's no net settlement obligations against that account. So the aforementioned order types, the SFT, PD, and DVP, would only be completed if the modified look-ahead is satisfied. So the look-ahead would be satisfied if, number one, the pair of instructions that I mentioned earlier are consistent in terms of the number of subject shares and or dollar amount, QSIP and DTCC reference ID. Number two, the net effect of processing the instructions would not violate the respective net debit caps, collateral monitor, or other risk management systems. So again, risk related. So the last thing they're trying to do is establish a fee for the payer and payee of an SFT price differential payment order. Now basically, from this slide here, we can gather that DTC is proposing the lower fee for SFT price differential payment because setting payment obligations for cleared SFTs would require a higher volume of payment orders than would otherwise be required for settling payment for uncleared SFTs. And remember, uncleared SFTs are bilateral SFTs, and they will not be settled at NSCC. They must be settled outside of NSCC. Now, number two, SFT services are not bilateral, meaning all SFT transactions by the NSCC will be approved and cleared accordingly. NSCC at this time is unable to anticipate the size and composition of the SFT portfolios and activity, therefore making it impossible to control a squeeze if you don't even know what to anticipate. So basically, to sum this all up, NSCC 803, NSCC 010, and DTC 014, as well as Vendor Notice 2127, all came out on Thursday, July 22nd. This filing pertains to the settlement of bilateral or uncleared SFTs outside of the NSCC, as the NSCC service will only allow cleared and pre-approved transactions. It relates to the counterparties of the NSCC SFT service or entities otherwise unable to use the NSCC SFT service. The DTC anticipates more volume from cleared SFTs than uncleared SFTs and have also modified their risk controls to ensure the SFT service runs smoothly. The fact that we saw this and everything else come out on the same day jacks my little titties. So again, hope you found this helpful. This is DTC 2021-014 in tandem with the NSCC 803. That's all, folks. And I have a great video coming out. I think it all hit me and it's all coming together. Stand by.